Hello everyone, I'm Paris Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox, hosted by Richard Lummis.
Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. Richard Lummis is on assignment this week, so we take things in a little bit different direction where I interview book author Margaret Johnson. Margaret is the author of the book From SOS to Wow. This book can help you move your leadership skills to a new level by helping you to burst through assumptions, unleash your creative ideas, and take courageous action to finally move to where you want to be. Margaret is a longtime energy and power professional here in Houston, and she took some of the leadership skills she's learned along the way and put these into a book. Turns out that she and I are both Michigan State grads, so she talks about her years at Michigan State, how she got to Texas, and her professional career, which led her to this career. I think you'll find it a fascinating interview about how you can use many of the everyday lessons learned to help improve your leadership skills. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of 12 O'Clock High, which is part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode. And today I have with me fellow Michigan State Spartan, Margaret Johnson, who is a professional engineer, and she's going to tell us a little bit about that. But the reason I've asked her to come onto the podcast is she has wrote just a fabulous book entitled From SOS to Wow. And so I wanted to visit with her, and she's taken some time from her very busy schedule to talk to us about her book, her journey, and what you can do to really unleash kind of your own personal wow. So, Margaret, with that somewhat long-winded introduction, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you again.
So one of the things that struck me in your book, or perhaps it was on your LinkedIn profile, but you said you got to Texas as quickly as you could. And as a native Texan, that certainly resonates with me. But I was wondering if you could give us a little bit about your background, what you studied at Michigan State, and what brought you to Texas.
Well, I always loved math and science, and I had a girlfriend, one of my roommates whose sisters was in engineering, and she kind of turned me toward that. And I'm one of 8 children. My father's an engineer. I'm the only one that went into engineering. And I worked with Detroit Edison during my summers in college and got to do availability, reliability engineering. And even though I loved Michigan summer and fall and spring, the winters weren't my favorite season, even though I did like sledding and all the outdoor sports. And I think in my heart, I always wanted to go someplace warm. So when I graduated, I started looking west and south.
So you came down to Texas to work in the energy industry. Could you tell us a little bit about that work experience for us?
Yeah, when I first started, I was working for the power company. It was a similar job to what I'd done at Detroit Edison. I'd looked at, like I said, a lot of different jobs around the country, and I think it being warm and sunny and beautiful here, and some work that I was familiar with. I loved the power plants too. I started with, it was back then, it was Houston Lighting and Power.
Right.
And I worked my way into management, and when deregulation came through, I just had this inkling to kind of go off on my own and do all sorts of other different things.
So what led you to write this book?
I think part of it was really seeing so many people stuck, and I don't believe it has to be that way. I think a lot of times when people get kind of stuck in their rut at work or in their personal life, they really don't see any other options, or they're so tied up in their day-to-day they can't look outside that. So I wanted to help people realize and see a lot of different possibilities and kind of give them a little guidebook and a little kind of sidekick to help them get well on their way to where they really could be.
So one of the things, Margaret, that struck me about your book was it really was not simply an inspirational book or kind of get off your duff book. It really gave the reader some specific action items that they could do, and you actually have exercises in here to get people thinking about not only what they want, but how they get to what they want. So I was wondering if you might be able to explain why you incorporated both of those into one book.
I think what I've seen a lot of people, they read something, they hear a motivational speaker, oh, that's awesome. Okay, I feel all pumped up. And then 3 days later, they go back to life and go back to work and they haven't done anything. But if they could have a more concrete step or a little exercise that would at least get them started, I think that starts to kind of start the momentum. So the book is kind of sprinkled with some exercises, and you don't have to follow the book from page 1 to the end. It's kind of like once you decide what your SOS is and where you really want to be, you can kind of jump around the book like a buffet, a meal buffet, where you take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and whatever works for you that day. So that's why I wanted to tailor it that way. So it'd really actually be something that they could use right away. It doesn't have to be the whole book. They could take a little piece of it and start moving forward.
So I guess we should say that at least the way you use SOS, I think that stands for same old stuff. So you really help people moving from the same old stuff to the wow, which is well on the way. There were some specific things in the book that really struck me. And now that you've explained that it's really a buffet, it makes me understand why when I read it, I was really able to jump around and pick out things that I thought were really spoke to me. And amazingly, one of those was closer to the end because I wanted to go to the part about failures. I've certainly had failures in my life, and you talk about those in a way to struck me as a little bit different because you in the example you gave, you spoke about something that might not be considered a failure. You considered it a failure. You called it a failure, or you still refer to it, yet you're able to grow and learn from it. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I kind of think everything we do or I do, there's a lesson to be learned. There's always a way to make it a little bit better. It doesn't mean we didn't do a good job, and I think a lot of corporations have that in place. The lessons learned. What did we learn from this project? What did we learn from this mistake? And so I kind of do that for myself. Every time I teach a class, I'm like, if I get a bit of feedback or I see something that didn't flow as smoothly, then next time I know that, I could do that a little differently, and I think I'd get a better result. So I think we're always learning and always growing, and it's kind of like that movie Groundhog Day. if we could go back, and I don't know if you're familiar with that one with Bill Murray, but if we could go back and look at our day over and know what we learned and then repeat that day, it would turn out a little bit better. So I think it's just kind of always about slightly improving and learning from whatever we're experiencing and applying that to all the new experiences.
One of the things that I think many people struggle with is they feel that they have some sort of untapped creativity and they don't know how to bring that out or even unleash it. And you really directly address that. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about how you see unleashing your creative genius.
Well, I think what happens a lot of times is we don't actually take the time to be creative, or people think that, if I'm not an artist or I can't write, so I don't have any creative talent. But we actually all do. We can be problem solving. It can be the way that we look at something. It can be the advice that we give. And so if we can just kind of take some time to kind of give ourselves some quiet time to think about some things or problems, or if we can do some little exercises that just start to increase our creativity because we can improve on it. It might be take a different way home, or, instead of doing something this way, let's sit down and think about how many other ways you could do it. So there's little ways to tap into it and improve and play with your creativity.
And in another exercise or chapter, I should say, you really took on or took head on, I thought, a really difficult area in the corporate world, which the title is Mythbusters, but the subtitle is what spoke to me more clearly, Busting Assumptions and Breaking Barriers. And you really gave a couple of examples where people may have made assumptions about situations that turned out really not to be true at all. And when you had the full information, it turns out your original assumption was not correct. But I was wondering if you might be able to help us understand, how do you keep from jumping to those assumptions, and then how do you then break the barrier to get through that?
But I think a part of it, I remember when I first started working in engineering, and I ran into my manager's office with, something that was happening, and he looks at me and he goes, Employee Olympics. And I'm like, what? And he goes, jumping to conclusions. And we sat down and talked for a minute, and I realized that I'd seen something, and all of a sudden I assumed X or Y or whatever was true. And so part of it is just realizing we always do it, and we always do it all the time. And so part of the first step is accepting that it happens, and then start to be more aware of whenever, if you read something, okay, what am I thinking about that right now? And I like to use an exercise with my clients. It's called Truth and Lies, or Truth or Lies. And so all these things that you believe about something, you write them down. Maybe you believe about speaking to upper management in your company. Oh, we can't do that. I can only talk to my immediate manager. So you write down all the stories that you tell yourself, and then you examine each of those stories. And is this really true? What makes me think this is true? How could I find out if it really was true or not? And if it wasn't true, how would I act differently? So it's first accepting that it happens, then start to be aware of things when you start to make an assumption and take action. And the other little exercise you can do is just to write down your beliefs about something and do an analysis of, is that really true or not? And if it wasn't, would I behave differently?
And then you've got a great phrase that you've got a lot of great phrases in this book and acronyms.
Thank you.
You got one of which is heart and smart. And I was particularly struck by that. And I was wondering if you might be able to explain that phrase or that acronym and how you work it into the training you put on.
Well, from project management and other, business or whatever environments, there's always this reference to the SMART goal, which is specific and measurable and actionable or agreeable and reasonable and time framed. And so in project management or work, we always say, I have to write a goal, and can I really do this? And is it specific enough? And then you try to act on it and get there. And problem is there's no heart or desire or emotion or intention connected to it. So the reason I put those two together, it's almost like the left and the right brain, my engineering brain and my creative or intuitive side. It's bringing those together. And if you bring that desire and think about, if we achieve this, if this goal was achieved, then I would feel this way, or things would be this way at work, or my relationships would, to focus on the feeling and the emotion and the end result, that heart part, can be the motivation to actually work through all the SMART steps. So that's why I like to combine it, because it's not just about, you set a goal and then you can do it. It doesn't always happen for people that way, though there are people that just set goals and flow right along without any heart part.
So, Margaret, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I was wondering if anyone wanted to find out more about yourself or your services, or more importantly, find out more about the book and where they could get it, how would they do so?
They're available. The book is available on Amazon. So it's From SOS to Wow, Your Personal Coaching Adventure. And it's available on Amazon. They can get signed copies from me personally at ideasandbeyond.com. That's ideasandbeyond.com. And then actually the book has been accepted by Barnes & Noble, so it should be coming to the stores soon.
Oh, that's great news, Margaret. So I've been visiting with Margaret Johnson. She is the author of From SOS to Wow. She's a fellow Michigan State Spartan, as myself, and it's a fabulous book. I would really urge you to take a look at it. It really gave me some great ideas for myself, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Margaret, thank you.
Thank you for the time today. I enjoyed it.
This is Paris Fox again. We hope you enjoyed this episode of 12 O'Clock High, a podcast on business leadership with Tom Fox. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and rate the podcast. Thank you for listening.